Hello everyone, welcome back to the KMTRADERS channel. So this is the full market analysis volume 84. Again, we're just going to give an insight of what we think is going to happen next week, and we're also going to compare our analysis from last week too by leaving our annotations on. So what we drew from last week was this potential rise towards the upside. So through the week we can see that pretty much we've kind of seen this happen. Essentially we've not really hit our target yet. So what I'm thinking is potentially around the 71 area we could find some resistance and watch it fall over and fall into the downside. So I think what we were saying before is we're looking at around 0.685 as a target, so around here. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to go up in this area into 71, into this zone. The main concept that I'm going to be waiting for is pretty much this sell-off opportunity. So it doesn't have to break this high, but it can. Again, these are all just scenarios that we have to kind of participate and think about. But ideally, this sell-off opportunity is around 232. So if you were to get in halfway, you could still potentially get in around 100 pips or so. So I think for me that's worthy of a nice trading opportunity. So yeah, so really I'm just trying to see if this really does want to turn excuse me, if this really does want to turn over. But as a possibility, we will either see a strong rejection from around these areas here, even 71, or we'll get price to push up just a little bit higher and then fall over. So it doesn't really matter where price turns over for. We just have to be vigilant. And again, this is why on the day analysis, it kind of makes sense to review everything every day. And so coming on a week-to-week basis, a lot of variables can take place. And we're not even including any of the news events for the week. So pretty much what we're looking at is just a sell-off opportunity, and we'll see where this can go to. But yeah, we'll see what happens in that following week. So moving on to AUD USD. So for this one, in my notes, I pretty much wrote down this a possibility of price returning towards the upside. So we drew this from last week, and we found that pretty much where we had drawn our arrows from, we've had price slightly recovering up. So what I ideally want to see is a possibility of price pushing up again, and I think the second scenario that we had drawn here is that price just potentially moving over just a little bit and then running down to the downside. So I still think that this scenario is possible. So we have this range here from this high to this low, and we could expect a turnover. But most likely, if I was to pick a scenario, I would personally go with that price has that ability to push higher. Maybe actually, but yeah, it's basically just one it's one scenario that I'm looking at for now. So but either way, we're still looking for sells, and yeah, ideally we're just going to try and target 0.72. So again, a few pips either way. So let's just say midway to here, so just under 200 pips. So look, if we can get in on that, then pretty much we can get in on that run. But yeah, there's not exactly too adventurous. It's not too adventurous right now in terms of like massive pip counts, if that makes sense. But yeah, so taking a look at UJ, essentially what I have picked out for this one, so I'm a bit in two minds here, because I'm looking at price action on a whole, and I'm looking at it on a short-term perspective as well. So these scenarios, I think it's really just about looking at what price is doing on the day. So definitely feel that you would need to keep an eye out for price action with this pair. I don't have a strong bias just yet. I feel like I need more time to see price action develop for now. But the scenarios that I'm looking at is for price to potentially make one more push up higher, and then find some sort of reaction at 111, and we could potentially see a turnover, and then we could head into 108.5. so again, it's a good 250 pips. The other scenario that we're looking at is a buy side opportunity. So that could look like something like this, where price pushes down. Oh wait, so price, you know, possibly makes something like this and then pushes up. And if it does, I would have this expectancy to break this high. So I'll be looking to target around like 112. And that for me would be ideally a good setup for me. So you know, there is a possibility that we could see price continue to push up higher now, and the reason for this bullish pressure is because of this move, but also the reason for a sell-off opportunity and why I think it could happen is because we have this sharp price action retracing quite nicely to the downside. So I'm kind of in two mix of minds, but what we could look at doing is taking both buys and sells, you know, if the opportunity presents itself, right? So if we start to see, you know, a lot of moves, you know, a lot of price action turning towards the upside, we could play it into this zone and take some profits or move our trade to break even. And then if, for example, we start to see massive rejections followed by strong candles to the downside, we could look at taking some entries to the downside and, you know, pretty much have like a break even here on a buy and a break even here on a sell, and just pretty much let price action do its thing and find the winner in it. So this is my kind of thinking so far with UJ for now. So not really keeping any, can't really see exactly where it's going just yet, but I'm keeping those two options open. So we'll take a look at CAD JPY. So what we can see from this, well, what we spoke from last week was this possibility of price turning towards the downside. I had two options or two scenarios that price could pretty much rally towards the downside if staying within this low, but price broke above this high and then made this price action low. So what I could be looking at for this week is pretty much a recovery or a retracement, and then price to break towards the downside and take out the low, and take out this low here, so probably into 85, you know, good few 100 pips there, I guess, maybe, or so. Yeah, so a good 300 pips there. But the second scenario that we, or the third scenario that we drew from last week was this opportunity for price action to break up. Now, if price does break 90, I think that this could have a nice buying opportunity, but I feel like this would be this would take a whole week to form, and if so, then we will usually have some sort of we will be able to kind of give you some of insight of that bullish opportunity. But for now, I can't really see any bullish pressure coming in. I can see this bearish candle pushing lower. It's nice and strong. There is no divergence actually, but you know, that is a slight warning, but we'll see what can come from this. I think we could play price action to push into these lows, maybe at 86.5 or so, but yeah, we'll definitely see what happens in this pair. So moving on to EJ, let me check my notes real quick. So for EJ, this one, I have a strong feeling that this could still descend lower. I'm not really seeing any price action pushing up higher at all yet. There is this possibility of price breaking up above 130.5, so that is a possible option. So I might actually draw that in just for clarity's sake. So what I'm keeping in the back of my mind is something like this, and then a rollover. But the other scenario is, you know, it's just going to be a straightforward break, and I'm just looking for price to enter 128.5. So where price action is right now to 128.5, you know, just under 100 pips. So really, there's no you know, definite route for this just yet, in my opinion. I think that this scenario where we could watch price action break up higher, there is a possibility of that happening, but most likely there is a possibility of price just continuing to push lower, as we can see price action just currently pushing lower anyway. So this could just be, you know, the form of the low and then a lower, the higher low, and then, you know, we could be now potentially pulling into or pushing into to take out this low and this low here. So I'm just keeping those two options and scenarios in my mind for now. So yeah, moving on to NZDJPY. So for this pair, I think what we spoke about last week was price. We were waiting for price to push lower. What ended up happening was price ended up pushing up higher. So I think what we could expect from this price action right now, I feel like that, you know, with this bullish pressure, maybe there could be one last leg up towards the upside, and if so, then we could potentially end up having that rollover that we were looking for. So just something simple like this, and you know, this is where we would be looking to take our sell, not exactly at this turnover point, but essentially we have to wait for price action to do its thing before we get in. Remember guys, like, it's not, we're not instantly waiting for price to break above this high and then turning over. We need to wait for price action to switch for us, and that's pretty much where we can get our entries in. Okay, so if we take our high to this low, if we were to hold it, it's, you know, it's 300 pips or so, just under. Obviously I don't always recommend that. I always just say, you know, take what you want, take what you need, and don't get too greedy. But obviously if you do want to hold this way, I recommend securing some profits, or just at least at the bare minimum getting your trade to break even. Okay, so moving on to AUDJPY. So for this, I'm in two kind of states, but essentially I'm still confident in looking at price action to actually, what did we say again from last week? So last week we were looking for price to break this high, I believe. Let me get rid of that. I'm not really too sure, because I think that with this week price has pretty much pushed lower. I'm just checking my notes over again, sorry. So I'm going to draw two scenarios out here. So I quite like this as being one scenario. In terms of like what I think is going to happen, I think it's pretty much a 50-50 split. It really just depends what's going to happen. So one scenario is that if price, you know, pretty much retraces here and manages to push up higher, then we could be looking at a sell. But the second scenario that we might be looking at is if price breaks this low here. I think what the best scenario is to wait for that retest and then wait for that continuation. And if we can get that continuation, we could be looking at around 79.5 or even 79 flat. So yeah, really, it really just depends what price action does first. So essentially, if we get a break of structure towards the upside to here, we should be able to find, if we find any rejections, then we could be looking for price to push lower. If we get price to break this low, then essentially we're going to have to probably wait for a bit more of a retracement, and that can obviously take time. So this sell scenario, it could take over another week or so. So we may look at that opportunity next week if that scenario does happen. So yeah, so now looking into USDCHF. So what we spoke about last week was a potential recovery, so a retracement, a mild retracement, and pretty much we saw this happening right at the end of the week. So what I drew here was price to push up, and we were just waiting for kind of like some sort of failure and then a retracement. So right now we can see that there's strong price action right now. I think in this scenario here we were explaining the possibility of price breaking this low, so I don't think that actually happened. Well, that didn't obviously happen, but what ended up unfolding was price smashing up really quickly, and it was able to break all of these highs here. So I think that there is this continuation play coming in right now. So what we could look at is something like this. I'm not saying it will definitely go here, but let's just make that a bit simpler because it's a bit confusing. But yeah, essentially what we're going to try and do is pretty much look for a nice buying opportunity, and essentially we're going to try and target 93 flat. So wherever this lies, you know, it may take some time, but you know, good 170 pips or so. So it really depends how this unfolds, but essentially we could expect price to dip just a bit lower and then wait for price action to really do what it wants to do, and if it's able to to continue to be bullish, then we should be able to push with that price action. So yeah, so let's move on to now USDCAD. So for USDCAD, what I'm thinking is basically a continuation play lower. Yeah, there's a lot of mess right here, so I've got a lot of alerts set around here, so these levels are quite key towards myself. So yeah, pretty much what I'm thinking is if price is able to break up a little bit, we could be looking at a sell opportunity. I think this is what we spoke about last week. We're looking for pretty much a sell from this point here. We missed this point. I think price action just was pretty much dropped off, so now we're essentially just waiting for the retest of it. And essentially we could expect price to drop low and then push higher, so really we're just waiting for a retest. So if price can come into this area or range, so we could see price drop low and then retrace up higher, or we could just get price breaking up higher. So either way, it doesn't matter, we're still going to be waiting for a retest. But what we are trying to do is trying to get a sell in here and watch price action drop off. So you know, good 150 pips, maybe just under 150 pips at one. If we did target 1.24, and again, if it really depends if price does push lower, and if so, we could even look at a counter trade towards the upside, which I mean, it really is quite risky. It really depends on your style of trading. I personally wouldn't do it if you're a beginner. Excuse me. I would probably just continue to stick with the trend. Sorry. And yeah, so I would just personally look for sells. And I'm looking for price to take out 1.24 at least at the bare minimum. And then long run, if we can take out this lower, or if you can take out 1.24, we should be able to see price action run into 1.28. So again, there is that strong rally that we can take place for a good 400 pips or so. So yeah, that's pretty much where we stand for this week. Not really been too much again from last week. But yeah, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, I do appreciate your time for watching. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Message me on my Instagram or Telegram, or even in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So thank you very much for listening, guys, and we'll see you all in our next video.